All right, welcome to the fourth installation of the Jumpstarting Business Operations webinar series. I'm Zane Clark, Senior Director of Education for the Specialty Equipment Market Association, better known as SEMA. Today's topic, adjusting to lower demand and finding new ways to grow. I'm sure this is going to be a fantastic conversation. A few housekeeping items before we get started, as we always like to do here on SEMA webinars. First house cleaning item is, hey, do the minimal amount of cleaning. Don't exert yourself too much, just a little bit of surface cleaning until that point when you have a guest arriving from out of town or a family member, and then it's time to clean like crazy. All right. You'll notice that you have a control panel conveniently located on your phone, desktop, computer, whatever device you're viewing this with today. And it's got a lot of cool functions in it. First thing that I want to point out to you is the audio button. You may have accessing the audio through your computer. If you'd like to call in, there's a series of numbers and prompts there for you to do that. Just remember to hit the hashtag at the end of it. That seems to be an important part of that function. You'll notice that there is a handouts tab there, and there is some helpful resources in there for today's webinar, and certainly for you to use as follow-up action items following today's webinar. And importantly, there is a questions function that allows you to type in questions at any time during today's webinar, and we will get to those at the end. So as you're watching and an idea or question pops in your mind, just go ahead and populate that field, and we will get to it at the end of today's webinar. Also very exciting, I see a lot of familiar faces on here, and you're probably just joining us not only for the value that it delivers, but at the chance to win a free e-course offered by Brain Zooming. It's an 11-step course, Strategic Planning Made Simple. It's a $549 value, and we are very thankful to the folks at Brain Zooming for offering that up to one of our attendees, and we'll announce that at the end of today's webinar. So you got to stick around to the very end. We are proud to partner with Mike Brown. He is the founder and CEO of Brain Zooming Group. They've been around for 10 years. Hey, there he is. Mike, how you doing, brother?
Doing well. How are you doing, Zane? How's the hair? You got a new cap today, new hat.
I do. Today's cap is brought to you by one of SEMA's councils, TORA, the Truck and Off-Road Alliance. So we have some good folks on today's webinar, I'm sure, from that segment of the industry, so we're giving you all a shout out. You don't want to see my hair, Mike. It's not pretty.
It's off-road.
Hey,
your hair's off-roading.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it looks like it's blowing in the wind. So I've said a lot of things about Mike. If you've been paying attention, he's just an all-around smart guy. Like I said, he's the founder and CEO of Brain Zooming. He's an author. His latest book, Idea Magnets. Mike, do you have it somewhere? Let's plug that thing, baby.
Oh, yeah.
There it is. That book helps dynamic leaders cultivate extreme creativity and innovative success. Mike's favorite color is orange. I think that's a shade of orange on there. And a little interesting fact about Mike is he likes to play 3-string cigar box guitar. And I thought he was joking, but there it is. This past weekend, he learned Lagrange by ZZ Top, and he hails from Kansas City area, and he happens to be a Chiefs fan. I want to say he's a front runner, but he now likes the Chiefs again. All right. Without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our host for today, our speaker, Mike Brown. Take it away, my man.
Thanks, Zane. I appreciate it. And appreciate everybody being here. There we go. I think it's coming over my way. There we go. Talking today about adjusting to lower demand and finding new ways to grow. And that title is a mouthful. And as Zane said, this is the fourth webinar in the series. So this is a little bit of the opposite of the one we did last week, which was dealing with surge demand. This one is, if you look out there and see, wow, car shows are being delayed, some of our selling opportunities are going away. We're not sure where our customers are in terms of coming back and how things look. Hopefully, we're going to take a brand look at this today and give you some ideas that you can start to look at to maybe expand what your brand does, do some product innovation, maybe some marketing, sales innovation, but also manage costs as well. So as Zane said, I've got a company called Brainstorming. We've been around about 10 years and help companies work on innovation and strategy. This e-course that we're giving away today called Strategy for Success is really, it's taking strategic tools and putting them in the hands of all business people, entrepreneurs, owners, staff people within an organization to participate very actively in strategy and make it maybe a less cumbersome or a less off-putting thing than a lot of times people think strategy is. So this idea of lower demand, and with the coronavirus and the impact, what can you do to try and get profitable growth back? There's a framework that we've used for years now, and it's got 4 pieces to it. So one piece is developed markets. So you can look at whether it's current customers or competitors' customers, how can you do some targeting? Maybe look at new markets or new channels that, or people who are using substitutes, and look at different ways to grow your business. A second area is developing products, and that could be either enhancing something that you're doing already, a product or a service, or maybe introducing something new. A third area is transforming the business. I mean, maybe you change your whole business model around, or growing through acquisition would be a possibility there. And the fourth area is basically managing to a new reality. If you're having to manage costs aggressively, where are you making the right decisions, and where are you still investing in the business and the brand to make sure that you've got the potential for continued growth in the future? As I was putting this together, I had so much content I wanted to talk about. We're limited in time. So rather than going through one by one of these bullet points, I'm going to give you about 6 or 7 brand tools or frameworks or sets of questions that can help you really across all these areas, and you can make a determination about what makes the most sense to try and drive growth and generate demand within your business. And as Zane said, there's a handout, and it lists all of these and all the exercises and tools that we're going to go through. If you think about these tools, a lot of times branding seems to be one of these topics where it's like, there's people who do branding, and then there's people who think they know branding. I'm sort of in the middle of, there's things that as business owners and entrepreneurs and people who are managers within companies, you can make progress on branding instead of just handing it off to maybe your web person or the person that does graphics and say, well, they're the branding person for us. These tools are to really help you think about your brand, and that's not just advertising, that's your strategy and service. Much like when you go to the optometrist and there's a tech up front that helps you or dials in for the optometrist, all the things so that it's pretty easy for the optometrist. These tools in the same way, it's things that you can work with to better understand your brand and maybe make some of the moves that you need to, but there's still a role for experts, and we'll talk about that at the end. This first one is looking at your brand promise and where you've got potential to innovate. And it really is part of 2 questions, is where's your brand right now and where can you move? Is your audience, or maybe new customer groups you're looking at, would they give you some latitude to do some new things with your brand? So there's 3 questions here. You want to ask about what your customers expect from your brand. And that's really sort of the things that you've got to do, maybe, although you could walk away from those. But these are the things that your customers look at you, they look at your name, the service experience, any touches that they have with your company. It's like, I expect them to do this. Second question is, what would your customers accept from your brand? And that gives you that idea of, well, maybe there's some other products we could do, or some other services, or we could offer a whole new line of business, and they could see that our brand could accommodate that. And the third is, what will they reward? And that may be they'll buy more, that may be they'll pay more because it's a great value to them. Maybe they'll stick around as customers for a longer time, or buy more frequently. The right intersection of those 3 questions, what do they expect, what will they accept, and what will they reward, really sets you up for a platform to think about what can we improve in what we do right now, but where can we add in other pieces, other dimensions to our business. And it's an important thing to spend some time with and get down to see how tightly are they going to stick to, they expect you to do this, and how much latitude. There was an interesting, and it's out of category example, but at the start end of this shutdown, there's a restaurant in Seattle called Canlis that was sort of a fine dining restaurant. They decided people aren't going to do fine dining. So they spun their business model and turned their restaurant into a bagel place, a takeout burger joint, and a take-home meal thing, and shut down the dining room. And I don't know if that'll continue or if they'll go back to their model, but that's an interesting way of saying we can extend this brand in new ways. So think about that for yourselves. Are there ways to extend and maybe grow into some new parts of the market? Second framework is on benefits. And a lot of times, and I look through some of your websites of some of the SEMA members, think about features. And features is really what you do, but benefits, which is a lot of times that's what really your customers are buying, and benefits is how what you do helps customers. And from being a marketer for a long time, I know it's tough a lot of times for people to get to benefits because they just get so bogged down in features. We do this, we do this, we do this, we sell this, we market this. Here's a really easy way to think about what are the benefits that our organization offers. So we're going to flip this, and there's two questions to start with this, that if your brand didn't exist, what would your audiences miss if your brand weren't there, or what unpleasant things would they have to start to deal with if your brand weren't around? And just start to list that out. What would be some of their challenges that they might go through? And when you get that list of negatives, then flip those over to the positive and say, well, what's the good side of that we're able to satisfy or fulfill for them? And that gets you to benefits. And when you can understand your benefits, that provides a great platform to enhance those and provide them in new and maybe more compelling ways, but also to think about other lines of business or other ways that you can innovate to provide those same kinds of benefits that people associate with your brand. So I said, there's a cool web page on the SEMA site where they're listing where all your businesses are in terms of being essential businesses and where you stand in terms of being open. So I picked off the most recent 4 businesses that were profiled there, and I went to all their websites and looked at, well, what would be the problems with for their customers if they weren't around. There was a tire company. There's a lot of people that had suspension systems, but it could be truck breakdowns, frustration. People would never fix up their old car. Just a whole variety of challenges. And then I did that exercise to flip it over to say, well, what would be some of the benefits? I mean, they win competitions, they get attention for themselves, they create family togetherness, or businesses are able in their fleets to perform more reliably. So these are all in the handout as well, but those are all benefits. And if you think about memorable experiences, there's a lot of ways that you could address that, or amazing experiences. And Zane said last time, people are buying the experience. So it's a great way, if you can nail the benefits, to really think about what are other ways that we can provide that. And we'll swing back to that in another set of exercises. The third one I want to talk about is market position. And you may have heard that, what's the position of your brand? And that's really sort of the space, not that you own physically, but the space that you own in your customer's mind. And again, that could be sort of a abstract concept to think about, well, what's our market position, unless you're a marketer and think about this stuff full time. But an exercise that we found that's really helpful is to almost think about your market position as 2 cross streets where your brand lives. Not physical cross streets like an address, but that perception in the minds of your customers. So here's a couple of examples. I took this picture in Austin, Texas a couple of years ago for a bank that said that they had Wall Street aptitude with 6th Street attitude. So that intersection for them might be financial capital smarts and Austin hearts is the intersection where their brand is. So you could think about things they would do to Austin and play up that relationship, but also demonstrate we've got complex financial instruments that the top businesses need. That's how the market position works. Or if you think about Geico, fast and savings, 15 minutes could save you 15%. So they're at the intersection of fast and savings. Again, provides a platform to think about other things that you might do with your brand. So the way you do this, think about what you do, the outcomes, the way your brand performs, types of customers. Just list all these things out, and there's space in that handout to do that, for each of these. And then when you get all those words or phrases individually, start to pair them up, put 2 together and said, if our brand lived at the intersection of this and this, that's one. If it lived over here by this, that's another one. And you maybe generate 15, 20, 25 pairs, and then look at what's the best cross street for your brand that provides great opportunity, and which ones really help your customers identify what your business does it says volumes about your brand. It becomes a shorthand for what you do, and really only your brand could live there. There's not another competitor that's going to be in that spot. That's a great way to get a handle on market position. Again, a tough concept, but an easy exercise, and we work with a lot of folks who are able to pick up on this and really hone in the clarity of their message. And as you think about trying to grow, and maybe some demand is challenged, you may need to pick up business from other competitors. And if you've got a clearer message, a more compelling case for the value that you're bringing, that's going to help you continue to grow and maybe make up some gaps. This next area, getting into number 4, is what can you innovate on what you do today? And that's sort of as we get into the product development piece of that first list of ways for profitable growth. So the first one, if you go back to those list of benefits you'll have generated, or maybe some of the answers you had in the brand promise, or some of the market position pairings that you have, there's a chart in the handout, and you can write some of those, we call them attributes here, but those could be the benefits, and that's what I have here. Those are some from the benefit list I shared before. And along the top, what are additional ways that you could do that? Or how could you address the top needs related to that, to eliminating worry? Or if you picked a particular customer group, or you tried to be more memorable or more frequent in how you delivered this benefit, or build on this market position, what ideas does that start to suggest? And if you think about it, if you could even fill in 2 or 3 ideas per square here, you're going to walk away with maybe 30, 40, 50 different ideas of other ways that you can enhance your brand. That might be new products, that might be doing a new service, it may be moving into another part of a business, but this is a really handy exercise to take some of that early work that you've done and think about it for innovation. I think in one of the first webinars, maybe number 1, I talked about big questions. It's not so much about looking for big ideas, but how do you use big questions that push your thinking? So this is another opportunity here with some of these questions that tie to product innovation. So, what are things that you've talked about and that maybe haven't ever done, or people in your marketplace, they've always wanted this, but nobody's ever acted on it. How could you take really crazy ideas that you've had in the past and turn those into reality as soon as you can? All of these are good starters to think about product innovations, to maybe grow in a new way, a new direction from your brand strength, from what your customers are expecting and will accept from your brand and they'll pay for. So hopefully you're seeing how all these pieces tie together to help you strengthen the brand and continue to grow. As we get into that transforming the business list in that first items on profitable growth, are there markets or customers that you've never really thought about serving before? Or are there new ways to do things you do? Or, we've seen a lot of businesses over the last few years will outsource things. Airbnb, they've got their challenges right now, but they don't have hotels, but they rely on other people to supply the rooms that people rent through them. So these are some questions, again, that maybe help you if you think, wow, we really need to change our brand pretty dramatically, can help you start to think about a different kind of business model, or maybe a bigger direction of where you go. So as you think about some of these ideas, and particularly if you've got some people on your team, some employees that you're bringing in to do this, it may feel weird to think about some of these big ideas, and people may be a little bit hesitant. I'm going to give you a clue of if somebody shares an idea that you maybe think, well, that's crazy, or that's pretty wild, we'd never do something like that. There's 2 things that we see that tend to signal that even if it seems a little wacky, there's probably some potential to that idea. And one is when people laugh at the idea, a lot of times it's because it's getting to something that everybody knows, but getting to it in a different kind of way, and people just tend to laugh. And I'll spare you the background of why that happens, but that's a good indicator. The other is when there's a noticeable, when somebody shares an idea. I was going through some work we did with a client the other day and looking at some of the ideas that people had generated. And I even did that just on my own of, that's really different. That's great. So that may be on your own. Maybe you laugh, maybe you ooh, maybe you do it with your team. But as you're sharing some of these bigger ideas, that's a really good indicator that even if it feels like that'd be really tough to do, there's probably a lot of potential there. So the 4th area in that first list on profitable growth was about how do you deal with the new realities? Maybe you've had to cut costs, maybe you've shut down, or you're running with a skeletal crew, and maybe business is down and you're not sure how you're going to be able to bring people back to match up demand, to match up hopefully potential growth. It's easy, and I worked in the trucking business, the transportation business, for a long time, and when we would hit economic challenges, the word would come out, just slice everything 7% or 10% or 15%, and it's an easy thing to say, just cut a bunch of costs out, and you may have to do that. It may be survival and you need to do it, but I would really encourage you to think about, when it comes to a brand standpoint, your brand isn't a cost, it's something that you're investing in. You expect to see a return and you expect to grow it over time. So really take a hard look at what are costs that we can remove to be financially strong as we can be, but what are investments in our brand, in our growth, in maybe our salespeople, maybe marketing, maybe relationships, that although it's tough, we really don't want to walk away from those. So here's some things, some questions in this area to think about. Partnerships. Are there ways that you can work with other businesses? And we talked about this a couple of webinars ago about how maybe you partner even with competitors in cases where you're both under some challenges, but you can partner up and maybe be more effective. Look at plans that you've had in place and which things still make sense. We've been talking a lot about the new important, not the new normal, but the new important, and what are you bringing from the past, but what with new market conditions, or maybe again you're going to car shows that have now been pushed off from spring or early summer into later in the year. What plans do you have for those that still make sense? And of the things that still make sense, can you rank those in terms of revenue potential? Those are good things to continue to invest in, even as you cut costs in other areas of the business. And finally, can you redeploy resources in new ways? And that's that Canvas story at the start sort of suggests that as well. But you see a lot of businesses that tried to get into or have gotten into manufacturing protective equipment. I think Toyota was a great example of that. They had the capabilities. This was a growth area. So that's a bigger spin. And you may feel, wow, that's going to stretch us in a pretty big way. But it's good to look at your expertise, look at your capabilities, look at the knowledge you have, and maybe use some of those previous innovation questions to say, where could we point this in a different direction? And maybe our business looks a little bit different for a while. Maybe it looks a little bit different for a longer time. So I want to come back with one story. And if you've been on some of these webinars, you've probably heard me talk about this side job I picked up, an unpaid side job during this time of live streaming church services for one of the parishes I go to. Well, in Kansas and Missouri, where I live, church services are just starting to open up. In fact, we had the first one at the church I've been live streaming was this morning. But last week, churches were starting to announce that they were coming back and would be having services this week. And the church that I've been working on with a live stream, from the very start of it, the pastor had said, well, let's just video something in my office. I said, no, let's video it in the church. Let's let people see the lights are on. The only thing that's missing is them, and it's vibrant, and you're still going to do services here. And when it's over, it'll be a welcome place to attract them back. So I want to show you pictures of two videos welcoming back people to let them know about churches opening up. Now, I will say I go to both of these churches. I'm friends with both of these pastors, but I ask you, as you would be on the internet and look at these two videos, which one would you want to go back to? So the one on the left, great pastor, he shot this in his office on his computer, and it was functional, and he shared some information, and it was funny, but wow, versus, and this is the one I've been working with on the right, where this looks like a place that, hey, we're ready to go again. And he was able to play back to that early idea of the lights have been on, we're here, we're ready to open the doors. So this all, the reason I'm sharing this is not to evangelize you, but to tie back to that earlier point. Even if you've got a great brand, you've got expertise, you've got loyal customers, you've got to think about all the pieces of this and get that expertise. As a business owner or manager or leader, you should understand your brand better than anybody, but do look to experts. And again, maybe it's the person helping you with the web, or somebody who's helped you with marketing, or maybe a salesperson, but make sure they understand the strategy of it and can tie all this stuff back together, because it makes a difference. The church I've been working with, donations were actually up in April and there were never any services, versus a lot of churches that numbers are down. So again, this has become my little case study during this whole time of how can you bring a brand back. So as you think about takeaways here, I really focus this a lot more on growth and growing your brand, but there are a ton of options out there. Look at that. Obviously, you need to be managing costs too if you're seeing lower demand, but look for growth. If you can figure out your benefits, that provides a great basis to innovate and go after new growth possibilities. Don't hesitate to think big about transforming your brand. There's no risk in thinking big. And maybe you don't do anything with 98% of the ideas, but maybe there's a couple of ideas that can bring about big change for your business. And finally, make sure you've got that right expert help. Branding is about strategy in the business, but it's also about the experience. It's also about the visuals, advertising, all these pieces. Don't just slough that off to, well, we've got a young intern and they get social media and they're doing our branding. You as a business owner or a leader in your business have got a stake in it, but look for that expertise to really maximize that as well. So that's what I wanted to hit. We've gone a little bit long. Like I said, I had a lot I wanted to talk about this time, but Zane, are there questions out there and stuff that we could ask, finish up some maybe specifics for people?
Yeah, listen, fantastic presentation, Mike. My head is spinning right now with just all the exercises and questions that could really push you to think about your business and your opportunity differently. We love acronyms at SEMA. Every volunteer group, every program that we have is an acronym. So much so that when new people start, we have to give them a dictionary or a reference sheet of acronyms. But one thing that stood out to me, and I don't think you presented it as an acronym, but I heard it as an acronym, and that's EAR, having the ear of your customer, and that's expect, accept, and reward. So you don't have to pay me for that, Mike. Feel free to use that in the future. All right.
Zane, I have been using that for 20 years. And I've never thought of that. Thank you. I will use that. That's great.
There you go. We are innovating together as we do this. Hey, so we are at that half hour, but we have some questions, and let's jump into those. I will move my question tab over here so I can read them. Okay, so there was a lot in there, so make sure you take the handouts. Those will be great resources for you to partake in some of these exercises and questions following today's webinar. The first question, Mike, comes from Gary in Leverton, California, and he's talking about, hey, what if I have some customers that aren't gonna, they're not gonna continue with us. They're gonna continue going without some of our services for whatever reasons. Do I focus on earning their business back, or focus on the core customers we have and getting new customers? How do I prioritize my outreach?
I mean, the short answer, which is actually a little bit more complicated, is what's the value of those core current customers you have versus the ones that are going away? I mean, if it's fundamentally they just don't have a need for what you do right now, it may be worth reaching out and talking to a few of them and see, well, are there other things that we could be doing for you? Sort of understand the relationship and see if you can pivot a little bit. You want to try and balance, but if it maybe is more price sensitive customers, people who are buying not a full array of things, maybe you do sort of let them go. And if there's other opportunities, other places to go, or to grow with customers that see greater value, place the concentration there. There's no easy, oh, do this kind of answer. You've got to understand your customers, and that may be, and I know SEMA was reaching out to members throughout this entire time. You may just need to make some phone calls or reach out to some folks and see where their heads are at.
Ooh, I just was reiterating your acknowledgement of a great idea by making it ooh sound.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Listen, I'm here for the next 5 minutes, so soak it in, folks. The next one comes from Gracie in Santa Clarita, and I think this is a question that a lot of our businesses at SEMA are experiencing. They've taken a huge hit the last couple of months, financially, and they want to reinvest in marketing, but they're doing so like on a shoestring budget. What are some economical options that aren't going to require kind of financial investments?
I'm going to throw out something. We may have to figure out how to do this. I don't know if we can drop in a handout afterwards. We've got a set of 15 questions that we use we call guerrilla marketing questions. So if you've ever heard of J. Conrad Levinson, he was the father of guerrilla marketing, which is basically sort of low or no cost marketing things that you can do. So he has had all these books of how to do that. We re-engineered that and came up with questions so that you can apply that specifically for your business. I mean, that can be asking for testimonials from your best customers. It could be doing more on social media. It could be just sharing more stories, even if your employees are sharing stories. So there's a variety of things you can do, and Zane, maybe we need to just figure out afterwards how we can do this, but we can get that list out to people. And it's a great way to customize low cost, no cost tools specifically for your business.
Yeah, I think certainly, Mike, if you want to share that with me afterwards, we can distribute that out to the attendees today. Last question, then we are going to get to the lucky winner of the Strategic Planning Made Simple e-course. The last question we'll get in today is from AJ Reed, and it's a two-parter. The first part is, hey, if you have a very technical product or brand, do you have any tips on kind of simplifying messages to get it out there without going heavy on the product side? So I'll pause there and let you address that one while I read the second part of it.
That benefit exercise, I think AJ can really help you do that. I think that's a challenge for anybody who's an expert. They have a technical product, maybe they've been involved in engineering it. You know it in such detail that you want to trot out all that detail. So speaking about it from a benefit standpoint, the other thing could be if there's somebody newer to your organization or somebody who maybe is a customer who they have a sense of it, but they don't have the same expertise you do, and ask them how they describe it. And a lot of times you'll get a lot simpler answer. We had that happen recently with us. We got a great catchphrase from clients who are like, oh, well, it's this, this, and this. And like, okay, great, that's what we'll use. So use the benefit exercise, but ask somebody who's less tied to what you do. They may be able to give you that take on it that's simpler.
Yeah, listen, one of the things that I'll steal from comedian Jeff Foxworthy is try to explain it to a fifth grader or try to explain it to Zane. If either one of those can understand it, you're probably going to be on point there.
Yeah.
All right. So we are going to get to the moment everybody's been waiting for. And that is the winner of the e-course, Compliments of Brain Zooming, Strategic Planning Made Simple, a $549 value. Mike, do you want to get your cigar box guitar and play me into this?
Yeah, we can.
All right. We got a boy band going on here. Today's winner of the e-course is none other than Jennifer LaVey. All right. All right. Hey, so everybody, make sure you join us next Tuesday, May 19th, where we'll be talking about pushing ahead with change while barriers are down. I think we've certainly seen the landscape changed right now, and there's a lot of opportunity. So that's going to be an extremely valuable conversation that Mike will again lead us on. If you've missed any of the other webinars, we do have them on the SEMA Education Facebook page. Be sure and follow us at #SEMA Education. If you have any specific questions on content, go ahead and email the education team here directly, and we will get that out to you. All right, have a fantastic Tuesday, everybody, and cheers. Thank you.